Welcome, reanimated fans, to this week's episode. I am H.A. Conrad, coming to you from Brooklyn, as always with my intrepid co-host Stuart Tiffin on the West Coast. Hello, Stuart.
Arrivederci.
How are you today?
I'm swell. Le soleil brille, as they say.
And today, as some of you may know, we're going to wrap up our recap of Season 8 of The Walking Dead, finally. So we're talking about the last 3 episodes, 14, 15, and 16. And then we're going to move on to some cooler things. But before we hop into that, Stuart found a little bit of news, which he is more equipped to talk about since he is the gamer in this duo.
Only one of us can be a man-child, H.A. I know you're jealous. But,
I am.
So, yeah. And this is our old friend Paul Tassi from Forbes. Haven't heard from him in a while.
I know.
It's mostly been the Eric Kane show. But Paul Tassi wrote an article about... Well, so you remember the video game Overkill? We talked about their introductory videos, which were super fancy and polished and well-produced. And we were like, oh, I wonder if this game's going to be okay. Well, I haven't played it, so I can't really say definitively. But reviews have been mixed to poor for its release. That's kind of what I've heard far and wide also. My understanding is that it was also essentially a Left 4 Dead clone. Not 100% on that, though. Either way, the news this week is that its planned console release has been delayed indefinitely. Obviously a very bad sign for a project that a lot of money has been put into. And actually, it might not have been a Left 4 Dead clone because it was made by the same people who made Payday, which was like this heist, but it was kind of like Left 4 Dead 2. It's like this weird heist version. Either way. So, but Paul Tassi's argument is, with Overkill, The Walking Dead being a complete debacle, why isn't anybody making the game that makes the most sense for The Walking Dead, which is an open world first-person shooter? Not unlike Red Dead Redemption 2, which I talked about last time, which I'm still obsessed with, and or Fallout, or any number of these other expansive open world survival / build a gang, build a hideout. Like, yeah, this universe is perfect for that sort of gameplay, but it's never been done. And he bemoans in the article the fact that it's basically just been Telltale's The Walking Dead story-driven point-and-click games, which have been... They were well received and they're well written, but they're not like an action game. They're basically like a choose your own adventure. It's just not only interesting for so long I could not get into them. And then mobile games, which he said, and I haven't tried any of them, mobile games which were bad.
Well, it's sort of it is definitely disappointing just because you have a built-in audience. I don't like, and do you think that that's part of why they've kind of dialed it in with this, is that they just felt like they could just kind of throw together some boring little thing and anybody will buy it? Or do you think that this is just poor planning on their part?
I think it's really difficult to tie in two genres into one IP. Like Star Wars has had some success and more misses in the video game field, and they've been around for 40 more years, you know? So if you look at that as a franchise of probably similar size following, if not maybe more, to be fair, they have not always knocked it out of the park, and it took a really long time before they were making games that were considered AAA. And I think that it just takes a long time because the mindset is so foreign. Not everybody can pull it off. He also pointed that Game of Thrones was another amazing IP that was rich and ripe for this sort of gameplay, but most of the open world games that are done are from original stories. And so I think it's just a matter of getting the right team together. I think it's possible. It's just that I think it's about the suits are not like geared that way.
Well, I mean, maybe you also have, if it's a totally original game storyline, maybe it's also a little easier to do that because you don't have to be beholden to whatever world building has already taken place, right?
True.
So
yeah, that's
that
correct.
might be part of it too.
Yep.
And maybe there's limitations to what you are allowed to do with the characters in the storyline, which are dictated by things that, obviously things going on behind the scenes and permissions and that kind of thing. So.
Yep. The only other IP I can think of that tried to do this, where they have established characters in the video game, was Defiance, that sci-fi show.
Yep.
It was a better show than it was a game, in my opinion. I tried the game too, and they did that they went out to do that from the start. That was their goal, but it didn't. I just don't feel like the game landed, or because it was an MMO. I find MMOs to be really annoying to play because of the grindy nature of their gameplay. But the open world needs amazing storytelling, and that's what you've got to really put a lot of money into that. I think it's perfect for it. I think Tassie's onto something, but it's a matter of whether or not the suits would be on board. The second little short piece of news is that The Passage premiered. I've seen the pilot.
I am due to see the pilot today, so don't go too spoilery on me, but I have heard mixed things about the initial reviews, but I'm not going to sort of dive into that until I'm going to reserve my judgment until I actually watch it. So
as one should. I have not read any of the reviews. I'm just going to tell you that I was happy with it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that because you and I felt similarly about the books. So
the trailer, the books were
at least the first one.
The trailer was just not a good trailer. Nope. Is my takeaway. So I'd say watch it, keep an open mind, see what happens, see how you feel.
Are we going to review that next time, or are we going to try the other one?
Yeah, that's a good question. We could do 2 episodes of The Passage next time.
All right. Why don't we do that since it's new and fresh?
New and fresh.
And then I don't know if you're ready for this, but I think we should jump into wrapping this bad boy up.
It's such a relief.
Yes, indeed. Thank you all for who have joined us on this season 8 recapping, reviewing, overview. I am very happy to say that after this episode, it will be over, thankfully. And, there were some, at least in these 3 episodes, there were some bright moments for me. But overall, I had a really hard time getting through these episodes. I don't know about you, Stuart. It was hard. As I said, it was hard enough to get through the season the first time. The second time has really felt like a slog to me.
Yes.
And my overall just sort of, and this has been the whole thing, my whole thing from the get-go, is that I do feel like the storytelling could have been tightened up very, in a way that would have made the season much more enjoyable. And I do feel like so much of the problem of this whole season is that you're trying to tell the stories of so many different groups of people and trying to cram them all into each episode, which I just don't think works very well. But with that said, the good thing is that it's over. and there are some things to chat about here. So, do you want to kick it off with "Still Gotta Mean Something," which is episode 14?
So this episode is named. Well, let's talk about writers and directors. It was directed by Michael Satrazemis and written by Eddie Gazalian. Mm-hmm. And "Still Gotta Mean Something" refers to the second time Rick gives somebody his word. The first time he did it was with Daryl, and Daryl kind of took that decision out of his hands several episodes ago. This time, and I know this is far into the episode, this time he gives his word and then pulls a Daryl.
Yep.
I think to me this episode is all about the scene in the bar with the saviors. I know there's other stuff that happens, but this is really the takeaway. It's the most interesting thing that happens to me. Yep. That and the a beautiful parallel scene of Henry getting saved by Carol. Yep. In a very, very heart-touching moment, because it might even be the same location as where Rick hid Sophia.
Yep, or at least it's made to feel like that. So
it looks just like it. It's so. And did you know this trivia that the actor who played Sophia and Henry are related? They're brother and sister.
Oh, I did not know that, but that's interesting.
It is super interesting. And next season 9, Henry is played by a new actor who is their older brother. They're three siblings.
Huh. Interesting.
It's pretty crazy. So they are similar look. And once you hear that, you can't get that out of your head. You're like, yeah,
Dane ambitious children.
and their parents.
And their parents.
But so this, the parallels just kind of layer on each other, where Carol is now saving Henry, her adopted son, who is actually the brother of her daughter in the show. It's crazy. It makes your mind spin. But to me, those are the 2 scenes that make this episode worth watching.
Yeah. And I would agree with you. Yep.
It's obviously Rick and Morgan are almost irretrievably evil, at this point.
Right. I was going to say that the only other thing that, not only other thing, but one of the things to note is also that this basically is, I think these are the 3 episodes that finally set Morgan on his path into Fear the Walking Dead. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. And these 3 episodes all kind of lead up to that, don't they? In a nice, it's sort of a nice way.
Yep.
As long as you can believe that he can really come in and out of insanity as conveniently as he seems to do. Morgan
well, and I guess it also sets up Dwight for that too, ultimately, right?
Yes, it does. And yeah, because this is the final episode here is the last time we see Dwight up to this point. Are you caught up yet?
I am not, but I will be. We can talk about it next time. We can talk about it next time.
Yeah, cool. We don't need to. We'll be ready to. But I'm interested to hear your impressions. But maybe we should save it for the cast. Other things that are happening in this episode. There's some Jadis mysteries, and there's some really nice. Actually, there's some nice Jeffrey Dean Morgan showing Negan as like a vulnerable person, even though he gets his way, and maybe that's all that vulnerability was supposed to do, was show that he can really just talk his way out of anything.
Yep.
It is nice to see him being like, seriously, what the shit?
Yes.
That's like a laugh out loud.
Yes.
Negan is really out of his element and feeling, and so those were useful. But still, it was kind of interesting.
And look, as much as I complain about sort of the one note that they continually have Negan playing like that role in these seasons that they've had him on, I do think that Jeffrey Dean Morgan plays him impeccably, and I always like seeing him on screen. So his interactions with certain characters are interesting. And also, I do think that they at least do somewhat of a good job in sort of showing where he's coming from, and that he ultimately does think that he's doing the right thing in order to save people, as kind of weird and harsh as it may be. And the sad part is that I think that it basically shows what he thinks about humanity, and that they're always going to go down, and be their worst selves versus their best selves, and kind of leveraging that in a way to hopefully make it work, which is a very cynical way of looking at it, but kind of based upon how you're seeing people in the show, you can understand it a little bit more, I think. There's a little bit more context, I think, that he shows here in interacting with the different people. And that's what I think they've been trying to show, but they kind of continually hammer that point home ad nauseum.
These are the only set of scenes in these 3 episodes where Negan is interesting to me.
Right.
The rest of the time, he just nonstop monologues, and it's it's
annoying.
It's absurd. But so I kind of want to cut 14 short because that was what it was. It was great that Jared finally kind of gets his comeuppance, even though it is a moment of pure evil on the side of Rick and Morgan. But Jared was so annoying and so evil
definitely.
as far as the saviors went. He had to go.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that was long overdue. It's sort of like, why didn't this happen before? It would have been so much easier just to deal with this in another way. But okay. Guess you guys are going to make this the central plot point of this. All right.
So 15, Worth.
Sure.
Directed by Michael Slovis, written by David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick, because he has four names now, and Corey Reed.
Yep.
And so this one, Rick is finally persuaded to read the letters written by his dead son, by Michonne, at the end of last episode, and so we kind of start with that. I feel like Andrew Lincoln's beard is fake gray.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, they wanted him to age a lot, I guess, in the last 2 seasons. Mission accomplished. But they made his, like, my beard has gray in it. It does not look that way. That's not how beards go gray. They don't go like matte gray. They go gray in like patches.
Well, I think there was also, I think the decision to do that is because they show a lot of scenes like flashbacks where his beard is very much not gray and he's supposed to look so much younger. Again, let's talk about the weird thing where only like a specific amount of time is supposed to have passed. We've already talked about the strange time warp that is The Walking Dead. So I just think naturally Rick would not have aged quite this much in a season. But I think that they're deliberately trying to show how worn down and ground down he is. But agreed.
You want to talk about a time warp? Aaron. Poor Aaron apparently has been out in the woods for like 30 days.
30
but we know
days.
it's only been like 2 days.
And yet he's at a point of exhaustion, no water. Somebody who's been able to survive all of this time is suddenly starving and without any strength. But okay.
His plan, the reason why we couldn't remember how he got the Oceansiders to join up was because it's so forgettable. The fact that he's like, I'm going to stay behind. I'll get him to join us through being pathetic.
I know, right?
that was the plan. That was the strategy, Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I forgot about that. Golly.
Yep.
Though, you know what? His survivability is laudable. I don't think I really gave Aaron much credit to survive long in this universe.
Me neither. I thought he would go fast.
He keeps defying the odds.
Mm.
And so we've got Gregory has somehow made it to Sanctuary when Jared and all those other hardened warriors were unable to make it to Sanctuary.
Right. And also, can I just point out, how many times is Gregory going to be a turncoat and switch sides? And, I just think Gregory at this point, of course he's going to do that. This is just what he does. But how is he able to, make it to places so, unscathed all the time? It just doesn't make any sense.
And he's still wearing his suit jacket, and
right.
It looks just completely... And we know he's unsuited for this life.
Yeah.
The fact that he'd, barely been outside the walls of Hilltop, but now he's able to get back and forth, this time on foot, from Hilltop to the Sanctuary.
Aaron, who is suited to this lifestyle, is, exhausted. It doesn't make sense, but okay.
But, Aaron's been living in a time warp zone where, other stuff going on. We've got Eugene's disgusting mac and cheese recipe with sardines and garlic, although maybe that's okay. A little umami.
It looked disgusting.
It looked pretty gross. I don't know how the actor was able to just slurp it down so much.
Gross. Yep, and we got him going on. We've got a lot of crying by Gabriel and sadness. And
Gabriel is pretty pathetic.
Trying to escape again and getting caught again. Because, the guy can't see.
Oh, you mean that was in the very end, yeah.
Yep. It's very, but still. And of course, we've got the whole, finally, we've got the whole Negan is alive, and Negan discovers the plot that Simon has against him, and Negan discovers the plot, that the fact that Dwight's been a double agent. And man, I don't know about you, but finally I was like, oh, thank goodness they're finally wrapping this up. Finally. Because it was just kind of ridiculous.
It doesn't. The way they build up to that scene too is they want to show, I think, that Negan is this expert at these games, keeping people off guard, because he first reveals himself to Dwight, and sets the stage for stuff that's going to happen way down the road. How he can have this kind of foresight, I don't know. But then he reveals himself to his council and says everybody's forgiven and no big deal. It's just weird how much rope he gives people. Yep. And that continues to the point where he's killed all of Simon's buddies.
Yep.
And then he's like, Simon, now you and I can fight it out to see who's the leader. And maybe this is him. He's all about these demonstrations of power in front of people, right? And I think that's why they want him to monologue so much, is because that's some of his power, is just demonstrating that he can talk people to death, apparently.
Well, it was
a risk.
It is a risk, and also hearing Simon doing his version of the monologuing, which he learned from Negan, is interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But actually, what I was thinking about it, watching this sort of play of power, is very much like a wolf pack, where you kill the leader, and then you become the wolf leader.
Yeah,
the leader of the pack.
It's definitely pretty savage.
This is the I think that this is part of what that character is supposed to be, and part of how he shows his power and convinces these groups of people who do feel powerless is that he's in control. And he's able to do that continuously, though I think I agree with you in that his monologuing, I don't know that actually helps, because Gregory does that to some extent too, with a lot less success.
His monologues tend to be in little meetings with two people, though, right? He's not good it doesn't seem like he's that good in front of a crowd.
Well, I guess he tries. He just doesn't often succeed. But Negan definitely has that charisma going on. And so there is, you're correct. Like, definitely think that's a risk, but I think he knew he was going to beat Simon. And
I'm not sure how, because honestly, just physically, like Jeffrey Dean Morgan versus Steve Ogg. Steve Ogg is built. And Jeffrey
Yeah.
Dean Morgan is kind of skinny. They hide it under the leather jacket. But when there's a scene with him and Austin
That's true.
Ocelio, for who's Dwight, they're both like emaciated, and I feel like maybe that's the most realistic portrayal of people in this world that you get. I mean, instead of just like starving Hollywood actors who are like
Yeah.
you can't eat because their agents tell them not to eat or something. I don't know why people insist on being so weirdly skinny, but they're like they look like they're starving to me.
They definitely look like they're wasting away. But Steve Ogg
Ogg's
does not.
pecs are like bumping out, and he's got big muscles, and I was a little bit like, yeah, okay, like Negan can really win this fight because he's a skinny guy.
Yeah.
Either way, he does win, mostly by his stunt double kicking Steve Ogg's stunt double in the face a lot.
Yep. And what's interesting about all of this, so Negan is he learned about the fact that Simon had killed off all the scavengers. He's pissed about that. And then, despite the fact that he forgives everybody, he's like, but I'm still going to kill off Rick and all those people, even though people are resources. Even though he's forgiven multiple people multiple times for multiple sins, so to speak, against him. I guess with Rick, it just doesn't come down to that. Even Michonne's last plea for Carl, like, do you and I had this issue at the time. I'm still having this issue. Like, yeah, I mean, Negan liked Carl, but not enough to like follow the things that he would say. Like all this power that Carl supposedly has with his letters after death. I don't really like it. Just seems kind of insane, right?
It's like wish fulfillment for the writers because they know going into next season, this is a huge element of next season too. So it's like they have to give him this legacy of being this philosopher that has changed everybody's minds. But yes, to us, it's just like a bunch of sappy piano music and somebody reading a letter of pretty obvious things to say.
And look, I guess if they had built up the Carl character in this way and made him this central focal point and shown, maybe done a better job of showing him doing these things before his death, that would make sense. But it doesn't feel like that. It feels like a big, stupid plot device. And so you're not surprised at all when Negan totally rejects this idea that they should have peace. Like, why on earth would any of these people have peace with each other? So anyway, that's just one thing that I was really frustrated by once again by watching this. I'm just like, oh my gosh, who decided this would be a good idea? Carl is somehow now Buddha.
Best part of that scene is when Negan stomps the walkie-talkie to death, as we need to have happened in Fear the Walking Dead last season. More walkies need to die.
Be trampled upon.
Another amazing scene, good scene in this episode was the rescue or murder attempt of Daryl and Rosita versus Eugene.
Yes.
Like they snatch him in a really, really cool like ninja way.
Yep.
But and then they like do some walking around through this town to try and get back to their car, and Eugene pulls this amazing move on Rosita. Just like he puts his two fingers out, and you're like, oh, is he gonna pretend he has a gun and stick it in her back? No.
He pukes on her. Which, you know what, I have to say, like, I laughed out loud when it happened, because it's, honestly, this is an amazing thing for Eugene to do, because that's exactly what he would do.
Right? He's like, I have a weapon that I can employ, and he does, and it works. And, he, like, looks around, he uses his environment, too, and the walkers, and then is able to get away. But,
And then
all of that against the backdrop.
I know, and then buries himself in a trash heap.
Yeah, like he does a great job of evading Daryl, the Wonder Tracker, who can track anything anywhere,
except for Eugene in a trash heap.
All of this that he's doing. Do you think that this? Let's keep in mind next episode and his massive like checkmate or whatever. Is he already making the bad shells at this point?
Yes.
There's no time for him to make the entire order.
No.
Before the next day without help. So he chooses not to divulge that for, I'm sure, just TV reasons. It's kind of crazy though, right? To think.
Yeah, but also he knows, given how they are coming after him and trying to kill him,
that they wouldn't believe him.
That they wouldn't believe him at all. And also, they really have a reason not to believe him. So I think that this is just his way of rationalizing it and just figuring, well, I know it's going to happen if it gets to that point, so just leave it alone and try to survive until then.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely believable. It's just a little crazy that he's probably already put lots of hours into this. Oh, he also gives Rosita credit during their walk. He's like, some of it was because of Gabriel screwing up, and the other part was because of my, things that you told me. And so, maybe we're supposed to believe that he made all of the bad bullets the next day.
Maybe, but I don't buy it.
But that's kind of everything that happened in this episode. We're moving on down
into the finale,
which was called Wrath. It was directed by Nicotero and written by Gimple, Kang, and Negrete. And here we go. Yes. Is that Chandler Riggs? No, that is not Chandler Riggs.
Nope.
That's just some other little kid with a Chandler Riggs 8 years ago haircut.
Yep. Notice that it's only the back of the non-Chandler Riggs actor.
They show a profile at one point towards the end, and that's when you're like, oh no, that ain't.
Yeah, definitely not Chandler Riggs. So a lot of this goes into flashbacks, and we are rewarded with the crazy sad eyes of Rick that we've been seeing all throughout this season in weird little flashes. And, again, there's a lot of like subterfuge and plots and all sorts of things. So, once again, Dwight uses Gregory as his messenger, and Gregory has planted a false plan. And then Negan also plants another false plan, and everybody's planting false plans so that, eventually I guess they're going to line up together. I found this particular, all this plot to be exhausting to watch.
Yeah, it's too
tiring.
Complex. It's too complex, and you're just always barraged by these scenes, especially this busy scene in the sanctuary before they all leave. It's just like the scene in the dump when all the dumpster people are just walking in random directions to make it seem like there's so many of them and they're all moving with a purpose. In the background, when Jeffrey Dean Morgan's talking to Dwight, and I think Gabriel's there, and some other guy with blue hair, there's in the background are just people. Literally, they're not going from one side of the screen to the other. They're going from every direction in every other direction.
Yep.
That's what makes it insane. It's like if there looked like there was a pattern or some sort of
something
mindset to what they're doing, I would be like, yeah, okay, that looks like a room full of people who are getting ready for something. Instead, it just looks like, all right, we're going to put you at every degree on the compass, and you're going to walk in a straight line from where you started. But just don't bump into anybody. It's just crazy. Yeah. But there's also this sense of how the hell are there still so many saviors?
Correct. Have you ever seen the show Elementary with Johnny Lee? So we were watching some episode of that, and there's this scene where he's walking with somebody, and there's this random cat that just keeps walking in and out of the frame. And it made me think of this scene just because it's like there's nothing like here it's deliberate, but it's just one of those things where it's like you can't help but notice that it's like the same people walking back and forth all the time. It just kind of takes you out of whatever it is that you're trying to watch. Also, cats are jerks, which also made me laugh because probably they had to film this multiple times and the cat wouldn't cooperate.
Cat's just like, I'm going to go where I want.
Yep.
You're not my boss.
But yeah, no, this is something that they've done a ton of time. Like, they're getting prepped to go somewhere. They're getting prepped for like this assault upon the hilltop and other things. Like, couldn't there be purposeful things that they were doing that you could just make up, that it wasn't just them running back and forth in the background?
Pretend you just had a meeting on the right, on like stage right, and all the guns are on stage left.
And you got to get them.
Just pretend that if you want to show movement, just have everybody be on one side and go to the other side and get the guns. Instead, they're like going upstairs. They're going downstairs.
Or you're checking gear. Something that makes sense. This is like crazy pants. Yeah. So they got that going on. Then, of course, we've got Negan's twirling mustachioed villain thing going on. Where he's talking about the plots and then the plots upon the plots. And
I don't like to kill my own people, but Yeah, like the fact that he has a sacrificial crew is kind of weird for his philosophy. He does explain it away, but basically everything's breaking down.
Yeah,
Like
and despite the fact that people are resources, he seems to be taking an awful lot of everybody's out.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make sense. And then, we've got Rick's group, and we've got his, the split Rick and Michonne, and, your regular crew going off to fight the last battle with the Saviors. But then you've also got Tara holding down the fort at Hilltop.
With the leftover former saviors.
Right.
Now the good saviors.
Right.
Yeah. So they do take out this ambush, and Morgan starts seeing Jared, who's talking like a ghost, which is super. I'm like, oh, he's back. What a pain. I have to, and there's things that come up actually in the first of these 3 episodes, is we find out why he always says, you know what it is, I have to. Mm-hmm. Of course, I never want to hear either of those phrases ever again, because they've just been repeated
over and over and over again. Yep.
Either way. Things that are super annoying are, have you ever seen one that big? No, things are changing. What is it that we're seeing exactly? Just a big brown blur amongst the green blur of the trees in the distance. Mm-hmm. You have no way of knowing what they're looking at, unless, I don't know, do you have ultra high 4K HD or something?
Well, I mean, I think you're supposed to assume that they're able to see, like, a...
yeah.
I think that... But
I could
they
extrapolate.
But they just didn't want to show it, or they wanted to show it later, and even when they show it later, it's kind of, like...
Yeah.
Pretty bad.
It's one of those, like, remember the first shot of the boat that they got onto in Fear the Walking Dead? Yeah. It's like, oh, look at these dots. This isn't CGI.
Yep.
And the good guys are all walking in a field, just like,
with no cover.
We're walking to a battle out in the open as a big cluster.
All right. Can I also point out, why would you bring your only doctor and put him out in, like, I can understand if maybe you're going to bring him because you think that there may be people that need his help, possibly. Yeah. But wouldn't you more likely, especially since you know that he's going to be needed with other stuff, wouldn't you leave him at Hilltop or stash him somewhere? I don't know. Just seems a little weird.
Yeah, I mean, doctors have a really good life expectancy on this show, so I don't know what you're worried about.
Just saying, that was something that just drove me nuts. And ultimately, you know why they do it later, but, like, it's still crazy.
So a group of saviors also rolls up on Hilltop, but everybody, like, goes to this escape route.
A la Carl.
Exactly. Just exactly the same. Yeah, nice. Mm-hmm. You know what? Other than a really long monologue by Negan through the megaphone when they spring their trap, this does go pretty quickly. Like, actually, in this episode, basically just we're wrapping everything up in the second half of the episode. The first half of the episode is when they have the fight. True. Just a little bit longer than halfway through, and all the guns explode, and almost all the saviors are killed by their exploding guns, or many of them, and then it's like mop up.
Yep.
So it's other than the long speech, it's pretty good.
Yep. And then of course, the whole Negan thing, and the doctor's there to miraculously rescue him from a slashed throat, because that's easy to survive.
I mean, yeah. First of all, it makes me really uncomfortable.
Yes.
The slashed throat thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you talk or swallow or not bleed to death. Maggie has a real hard time with that, and that's kind of also setting up. They want us to think it's setting something up for the future, but I think this is where actually Lauren Cohan's salary expectations kind of undermined Gimple's plans for how this storyline was going to go.
Yeah, but it's still a stupid. I mean, I'm sorry, but no. It's a stupid storyline. And again, it's repeating the same thing that we saw with Dwight, and we saw Daryl let Dwight go. We'll see him again, of course, as it appears we will.
It's a little curious that Daryl is one of the cabal to overthrow Rick at the end of this episode when he just let go somebody. Yeah.
Well, don't you think he would have taken some learning, some lessons from that whole experience? But apparently not. And also, the other thing is that, like, okay, so I totally understand the idea that Negan is a dangerous character. And so the idea of him even being in prison is probably, like, I get it, but I also don't think exactly what we know about all of these people at this point. I just don't think that this is how she would handle it. I think she would talk to Rick more, talk to Michonne more. She's not going to be out there planning these secret plots against them. Definitely not. But
with everything they've gone through,
yeah, no way. And same thing with Daryl. Daryl would not participate in such a thing. But it's, so this really truly bothered me and made me like...
Well, there is precedent for Daryl because he already went against Rick by driving the truck into Sanctuary, and we saw how that went. So yeah, I'm also like, you really think that Rick has the wrong answers when you're the guy who did the dumb thing?
Well, that's what I mean. I feel like he would have learned his lesson from that. So I just don't see this being part of a plot point. And it also felt like, as hard as it is, given where they're going with it, I will say that I do think that it's highly unrealistic for the fact that they're all going to be cooperating so nicely together immediately. That just can't happen because of human nature. You don't go from totally hating these other groups of people to completely working together unless there's some like major crisis happening, which there isn't.
Well, the zombie apocalypse could be considered a major crisis.
Yeah, but I mean immediate. Like, it's not like suddenly you're all trapped together and they're trying to get in at you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this has been going on all along. So that's kind of like, I wanted a little bit more like working it out, though. God, I was so happy the storyline was retired that I didn't even care at this point. So yeah.
So yeah, the rest of the episode is just wrapping up all these things. And Rick and Michonne are talking Negan to death now, saying how he's going to be an example. Like, none of this needs to be said out loud.
No,
it really doesn't. Or Rick and Michonne could just like be making lunch one day in their kitchen and be like, "Hey, you know what we should do with Negan? Let's just make him an example and keep him in jail forever." You don't have to say that to Negan,
Right. Well, I mean, in the books, they do have this as a very long, drawn out, annoying plot point. So I guess maybe they felt like they had to do something to do with it. But like, Negan in jail is like a long, like this thing that goes on freaking forever, or it feels like it does. So I don't know. Maybe
talk
that's...
to me after you watch the first half of season 9.
I know.
And that's kind of the end of it. Well, we look at Gabriel, and he's back in church saying, "Thank you, I understand now." And I'm like, I don't really understand, but okay. But finally, maybe, asterisk, we're done with Negan and the Savior storyline, kind of. And, everything is fine now because Laura and the former wives of Negan are running the Sanctuary, and they're gardening now. And Tara is there helping. She's gotten over her issues. It's great. Everything's fine, guys. Mm-hmm. Just that's how you know that it's going to be great. Season 9 can't go wrong.
Well, and we do have a little bit of like the former, I always forget the former good savior guy that now wants Alden wants to stay at Hilltop and help Maggie out with the future plans with the windmills and all that stuff. So that's resolved, I guess, even though she wasn't willing to even take him into Bally's. She's like, yeah, you can make a windmill for me. That's all right.
Yeah, okay.
So
he makes this long speech, and she just goes, okay, and then walks away. Like, all right. That's the kind of leadership we need in this show, more. People who make one-word answers.
Yep.
As opposed to long speeches. But yeah, do you feel good? Do you feel relieved?
Yes, I'm so glad it's over. So glad. And I appreciate anybody who listened to us doing and Mike complaining during the recapping for this. But yeah, I'm really happy that it's over. I will finish up the season 9, or I'll try to get up to speed anyway. And then we can talk about that.
Good.
But for next time, I guess we will be talking about episodes 1 and 2 of The Passage.
Yep. Justin Cronin was a producer on the show, too, which is always a good sign, in my opinion, even though we weren't 100% on board with Guillermo del Toro's The Strain.
Yeah.
Maybe this will go a different way, and we'll see.
Yeah, we'll
there's
see.
There's some alumni from Walking Dead who were in this Passage. Like, one of the main baddies was that ill-fated Army lieutenant from the first season of Fear the Walking Dead.
All right. Well, that guy's always sort of like a bad guy, isn't he?
He does not have a face to be a good guy, apparently. It's a tough break.
Oh, man, that's got to be tough. To be like a character actor that always plays like the bad guy, and then you're like, cuddly as a puppy, and everybody in public is like, oh, not that guy again. He's always up to no good. Anyway.
I mean, Jeffrey Dean Morgan has had the good luck to play love interests on Grey's Anatomy and lots of other kind of characters, so he's certainly not stuck in that. But
well, I also think that he can look slightly different depending on what part of the facial hair he's got going on too, so maybe that helps a little bit. So
truth.
All right.
Anyway, but that's all for this week on Reanimated. Join us again next time, and we'll be talking about The Passage. And you can hit us up on Twitter at ReanimatedPcast, email reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, and of course our show notes are at reanimatedpodcast.com.
Woot. Until next time, ciao.
Bye-bye.